fun. Why would you do it? You know what I mean? So let's explore a couple of these other things. So we've talked about the social aspect. We've talked about, well, musical independence. Let's go to there for a second. How many trumpet players are in your band?
Jazz band? Or which band are we talking about?
Yes, you, both.
All. There's 5 in the jazz band. Right?
5 in jazz band, and then in the concert band. You play in the concert band as well?
Yeah.
And how many?
Oh, we just divided those up because we have 2 bands.
Rough number.
Total, there's, what did you say? 20 some?
20 some, and how many trombones?
Like 15.
And horn?
15, 11.
Tubas?
4.
4. Okay, so when the tubas are going to play something, all 4 of you better play it the same way, right? And you're going to play it the way the band director tells you to play it, or bad things happen. But now we're in a situation where we're going to cover we're going to hit you here for a couple of things. Musical independence, do you understand what that means? You get to decide how you think this goes. That part is not being played by any other person in the group. So you get to vote. You've got the sole vote on here's how I think the tune goes. And then we can talk about it and say, well, we go back to those other strategies. But you really get to drive that part. You get to drive what the tuba part sounds like in this arrangement. And does it sound like it did the first time it was played by the Canadian Brass or whoever this was written for? Maybe, maybe not. It doesn't matter. Because what you 5 have to say is unique and different than what they had to say, and it's every bit as valid, because the 5 of you are different people than they are. And so it doesn't, that's an important thing to let sink in. What you have to say is valid. What you have to say musically is valid. And then let's take that into the next thing. How, on a scale of 1 to 10, and there's no offense meant by this, how interesting are your band parts? That's a heavy sigh.
4.
4. A 4 on a scale of 1 to 10. And that's neither here nor there, right? That's just what it is. How interesting is this part compared on a scale of 1 to 10?
8.
An 8, right? So now how excited are you about playing in this ensemble versus playing in band? I sat in the back row too, and so they're going to stop again to work with the clarinets. And then, of course, I'm going to toss cymbal pads, and of course I'm going to shoot spitballs, and of course I'm going to talk to my neighbor and do all that rock stuff. Because I could play my part fairly soon, after we got it, because my part wasn't as challenging. And so this is a lot more interesting for us, right? Down in the depths. And so the parts that the 2 of us are going to have, and the horn to some degree as well, depending on the lit and the level of the overall band. The band director has to pick music that fits the whole ensemble. So they have to figure out, here's the instrumentation, and here's the quality range. It's from here to here. And so they have to make that work. So it's not their fault. I mean, they're doing absolutely everything they can to make it as positive and interesting experience for all of you. However, there are instances and instruments where that's just it's an impractical aspect. It's not, there's no fault to be laid. That's just life. So this is a wonderful opportunity for your bassoons and your tubas and your euphoniums and your horns to have an opportunity to express ideas and have much more challenging music. Does that make sense? I'm really, really excited that you get together as much as you do. That's fantastic news. That's great news. And I would encourage you to continue to do so. And it'll actually, the 5th thing we didn't really talk about because it wasn't really applicable, but there's an opportunity here. So you continue, or you look to sight read a lot because these pieces are okay, but is there something that would be more interesting? If you could play any music that you wanted to play, what would that be? Anybody can answer. It could be a song, or a group, or something you heard on the radio, or a movie theme, or a TV theme. If you could play any tune with the quintet, what tune would it be? Or whose music would it be? Do you ever listen to music? What's on your iPod?
This is a pretty, I don't have an iPod.
Who has an iPod? What's on your iPod?
A lot of rock and metal.
Pick one rock or metal band. Who? Metallica.
Sure.
All right. Metallica. Seems completely outrageous to think that the 5 of us could play a piece by Metallica, right? That seems completely ludicrous. Do you know that there's a cello quartet that recorded an entire album of Metallica? Cello quartet. Do you know that? You did not know that. So, guess what? That's valid. What's your favorite Metallica tune?
Master of Puppets.
Well, I'm sorry?
Master of Puppets.
Yeah. Master of Puppets. There you go. Master of puppets. So master of puppet, master of puppets for brass quintet. Why couldn't that happen? There's a practical reason.
Different instruments.
Why couldn't it work for the 5 of us? Why couldn't you play that for them right this second?
We can't sing.
Why? You are a trombone player. Why? There's a very easy answer to why the 5 of you couldn't play that for these nice people right this second. Play it for these nice people. You don't have the music. Ah, ding, 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 ding. Okay, so how do we solve that?
Get the music.
Get the music. And if we can we find an arrangement of it for brass quintet? Let's say the answer is no. Then what?
Right one.
Right one. Exactly. Now we get into the improvisation and the composition. So we find out that the master of puppets, somebody finds the music and they arrange it for the 5 of us to play, and you play it and you go, I don't really like this, but there is something to that groove that I really like. So let's keep that bass line, change the melody, keep the chord structure. So now you're creating music. Instead of recreating a piece, you're going to create a piece that the 5 of you, there's an opportunity for the 5 of you to create your own music. And it could be based on Metallica, and it could be Metallica. But then the 5 of you go, we're going to play the Mariah Rondo, and we're going to play Ain't Misbehavin', and we're also going to play Metallica, and we're going to play a brand new piece for you. It's about 45 seconds long. It's sort of a rock and roll thing that we really dig, and it's called My Feet Smell Like Cheese, or whatever it is. You know? So I don't mean that personally. So there's an opportunity for you to take it upon yourselves to create music, to be in the process of creation. Okay, does that make sense? So do that. It's a lot of fun. It gets more and more and more fun, right? You're having more fun in quintet than you are in band, I would predict, right? So do that. So maybe you're the one who spearheads it. You're the one who finds the music and figures out, all right, you guys play this, you play that, I'm going to try this. It's a way more interesting way to go about it. All right, thank you 5 for participating in this part of it. Thank you. We have about 20 minutes left. I want to get into the strategies because, and we don't pretend that we understand what obstacles are in the way of making chamber music happen. And we know what block scheduling can do and what pulling out students for extra rehearsals and the pressures of athletic band stuff and the relationship that you have to have with the musical that's going on and all of that stuff. So we're not assuming that this is an easy thing to do. All we're saying is that this is an important thing to do. And it all has to do with balance. And how can you integrate more chamber music into your programs is something that we'll talk about next. And I'll sort of lead the group through the next aspect of it. To hit it, again, sort of quickly, the 5 strategies that we've developed are to start with the low-lying fruit in terms of the students in your program who are interested in it. Using portions of sectional time, making it the student's problem to figure it out. There's sort of a 2-part for that, and then using the chamber music program in your school as a recruiting thing. So first off, I'm going to have Chris talk a little bit about involving the students who are already around to get a chamber music program going.
Yeah. Well, at my school, I was lucky enough to go to a performing arts high school, so there was a good amount of extra time for, for music. But there's always, no matter what band room or what band that you go to around the country, there's always the kids who are always hanging around. You know what I mean? They're like in the band room, or maybe supposed to be in class and they're in the band room or whatever. But the bottom line is those are the kids that are the best to start with, to start a chamber group, because they're already around and they're obviously into something about band. And that's kind of how it started, how the brass quintet that I played in when I was in high school started. It was just a bunch of us who, instead of going to the cafeteria for lunch or whatever, we would hang out and play in the band room. We figured, yeah, let's get a group together. So we ended up calling it the Orange Chicken Brass Quintet, because we'd always go get orange chicken for like 5 minutes and then bring it all back to the band room and eat while we rehearsed, which wasn't, I guess, wasn't good for our instruments, now that I think about it, orange chicken going in the instrument. But we had rehearsal like every day, and it was because we wanted to have rehearsal every day. And our band director he eventually let us start playing before the concerts, before the band concerts, and then it turned into at intermission on stage in the band concerts, and then whatever. So we had a really good time with that kind of stuff, and it was all because we were the ones who were hanging around the band room. So.
When we're at home, Andrew actually spends a fair amount of time teaching in the Washington, D.C. and Baltimore metro areas, and I know that one of the things that he does is run sectionals for different groups. Are there strategies having to do with sectionals that you feel like you can apply some of these things?
The thing about sectionals, which is fantastic, obviously there's not a single band director on the planet that wouldn't love to have lots of sectionals. Now that being said, it takes a person to be in front of each section, of course, and if it's more than just one section at a time, which is a logistical problem, then you have to hire people, so then there's a money and a space and a time issue. So don't misunderstand me, it's very easy for me to say, you should do sectionals, they're very important. And you go, thanks, that's really helpful. But sectionals, especially for the instruments, kind of like what Lance was saying in terms of asking him the interest level, being able to kind of flesh out to show a tuba player, for example, how a very, very simple part is actually not all as simple as they think that it is. That's something that you can really get into the details of in a sectional. A lot of times I'll encounter a lot of kids who are very motivated, who don't have attitude problems, who will like look at a march and say like, oh yeah, that piece is really easy, we don't have to do that. And then I tell them to pull it up, and I tell them to pull up the easy part, and they look at me like they're very confused, like why would this guy want us to do this? I then explain that even if you're just playing pa, and you have 8 bars and you have 16 notes and there's an 8-bar crescendo, to explain to them that to do an 8-bar crescendo over 16 notes from say even mezzo forte to fortissimo is really, really hard. To play 16 consecutive notes where every single note is slightly louder than the note that just came before it and slightly less loud than the note that's going to come just after it. It takes an incredible amount of concentration to be able to play those 8 measures with a crescendo the entire time and not even have 2 notes that are the same volume somewhere in the middle there. So it's that kind of a thing where I try and show, and I obviously do a lot of low brass sectionals, although I do a lot of brass in general and I do a lot of breathing classes, so I encounter all the instruments. But for tuba, for bassoon, for bari sax, for that kind of a thing, to show them that to play their part to an incredibly high level, they have to be engaged all of the time, because I also talk about how it's very hard to have your brain engaged for the exciting part and then to be completely disengaged for 20 minutes, then turn it back on, off. That's hard for an adult. It's almost impossible for someone who's 16 years old. So I try and get them to stay engaged the entire time, and sectionals is a perfect avenue if you can figure out the logistical nightmare of having sectionals frequently. That's a great venue to discuss those kind of topics.